Three, two. Let me get a drink of water first.
Sorry. Okay, cool.
3, 2, 1. It's like iCarly. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Hello and welcome to the Minority Arts Appreciation Society, where we're ticking all the boxes. I'm Josh.
I'm Mattie.
I lead the music discussions and Mattie leads the film discussions. Today we're talking about, the two new albums we're covering are Xiu Xiu, The Girl with a Basket of Fruit, and Ariana Grande's Thank You Next. And the older album we're talking about will be Wilco's Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. And I think we all want to get into this podcast discussion. So, Mattie, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's a nice day here, to be honest with you. It's a nice day to talk about some albums inside with a gamer headset on your head, you know. Really, really appropriate for the warming weather.
I don't think you're allowed to use the term gamer on my show, I've decided. Okay. Yeah, it's a really disgusting day where I'm at. It's grey and miserable, which is fitting for a couple of the albums we're doing today. So let's just jump right into it. First, we'll start with the Xiu Xiu Girl with a Basket of Fruit. What's your history with Xiu Xiu?
So I've only heard one Xiu Xiu album all the way through, and that's Forget, which
Yeah.
I love. I wouldn't say it's not a flawless album for me, but it really ticks a lot of boxes that essentially no other album does, other than maybe Sophie's album, in terms of just hearing some crazy industrial smashing sounds. It just the the soundscapes they create in that album are so fantastic. So yeah, I was obviously really excited for this, it being their follow up. And I know it's arbitrary, but I did really like the album artwork they'd released for it. And yeah, so that's my history with it. I really like them as a band. I think they have great personality and character, and they clearly are passionate about what they're doing.
Yeah, I've heard I'd say three of their albums before this. Like I'd heard "Forget," which is an incredible pop album. Surprisingly, it's probably the poppiest album they've done. Experimental pop, but still, I mean, you can dance to that thing, and it's a good time. I'd say. Every now and then he screams a little bit, but you know you can get past that. And yeah, another one. My favorite Shushu album though is "Fabulous Muscles," which is a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous album, which everyone should listen to. And very dissimilar to this album. There are lots of very sweet melodic moments in that album, contrasted with kind of their usual noise, scary music genre thing. And yeah, with this new album, yeah, I liked the artwork as well. And I remember, I think the single that they dropped was Scissors, and I remember like listening to it and I had to like stop a minute in because I was like, okay, I'm not ready for this yet, and this isn't going to be another Forget album. This is going to be Jamie screaming at me for 40 minutes and scaring me. So perfect for the podcast, right? So let's just get into this new album. I mean, what did you make of it?
I was disappointed.
Interesting.
I came into this really ready to love it. And for the first, I would say 4 tracks, and this is a 9-track album, and I really wasn't sure, to be honest with you. When it got around to Pumpkin Attack on Mommy and Daddy, I was like, okay, I'm in, I'm down. This is great. But then it was at that point that I realized the album was almost over, and I was only just convinced that I was enjoying myself with it, and I was like, oh shit. But yeah, Pumpkin Attack on Mommy and Daddy, absolute fucking jam, so good, honestly. And I think the reason I like it so much is because it has everything I loved about like my favorite songs on Xiu Xiu with it. Yeah. So overall, I don't think it's necessarily a bad album. There's just elements about the production and the songwriting that just really aren't for me. I hate you, Skype, so fucking much.
Do you remember what you were saying?
Yeah, pretty much. So I don't think it's necessarily a terrible album or an album that's a departure from the band's core beliefs in music, but I just think there were elements of the production and the songwriting that really just weren't for me and not what I look for in this band. What did you think? Really
I
curious.
think that's a totally fair take. This is obviously a very divisive, alienating album. And if I'm honest, I had the opposite experience too. Leading up to the release of their last album, I remember they had the single "Wondering," and I heard it, and it was like amazing, you know. And then I was so excited for the album. And this one, whenever I tried to the singles out, I couldn't really get into them. They were so abrasive. It was like I felt like the album was shouting at me for even trying to listen to it. And I didn't really feel welcomed or wanted. So I wasn't super looking forward to it. When I actually listened to it, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. I really, really like this album. I think it's great. Um, I, when I first listened to it, it kind of felt like um, being stuck in the most intense Kubrick scene for 40 minutes. Uh, or like a Lynchian scene of like the apex of those types of movies when they're at their scariest and you're in that emotion, but being stuck there for the whole album. Like I put the album on, and I think maybe like half an hour in, I was trying to listen to it while reading or something, and I couldn't actually focus anymore because I was actually just freaked out. I felt like I felt claustrophobic. I felt very self-aware of my breathing. I felt scared in my own room. Uh,
I tried listening to this while I played Minecraft.
was that nice?
No, should have with Wilco. That would have been way much more fun. Go on.
In that moment of utter fear and isolation, I was like, yes, this is exactly what I wanted. This is great. It really moved me, and I can't say any other album this year has shocked me as much as this one did. Although I do think there are accessible moments in the album. The first track, "Girl with a Basket of Fruit," kind of reminds me of like Death Grips or something in a way.
Yeah,
The way the hook comes in, the "Girl with a Basket of Fruit," and like that kind of syncopated drum pattern, really dancey and tribally. Same with Pumpkin Attack, like you mentioned. Um, and yeah, I think this is an album about trauma and fear and self-hatred, uh, and there are shimmering moments of kind of softness, which I really appreciate. So overall, yeah, I really like this album. Any specific tracks you want to talk about, like that put you off?
So I think really it was around, like I was saying, it was the first four tracks that really had me confused. So "Go with Basket of Fruit," yeah, I did really like that. Actually, to be honest with you, it's one of the standout tracks for me. Um, but then as the album went on, they sort of started to blur into each other. Imagine,
Mm,
I'm gonna butcher this. Imagine Vive Mu just sort of blended right into Ice Cream Truck, and not in a really interesting way, just in a way where it just started to sound all the same, and the album wasn't really getting its effect on me. Um,
mm.
I guess I think the reason for why is I just find this disconnect in the production, which I think is intentional. Um, but the music. I don't know how to. I still don't know how to put it. It's such a specific thing.
There's a moment in the first track where Jamie shouts, "Ark Magog Bog," um, and then the like seventh track is about the lynching of a black couple.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, I think this captures the dissonance I think you're talking about. I think there's loads of really playful, weird, abstract stuff mixed with very real, horrific
yeah.
ideas and
Which
imagery. Is that what you're talking about? Was it
sort
jarring in that
of
way?
because I actually quite like that kind of thing, especially in like films. I sort of love that. Whereas here, I
Yeah.
just found the production really almost sounded like I wasn't quite hearing the music right. I never felt like I was
Mm.
participating in the song. I felt like the song was sort of just happening to me, and which is fine if that's their intention, then totally. But I just didn't really personally find it very affecting. I felt I just I love Forget for its simultaneously inaccessible and experimental sounds, but kind of engaging songwriting and so yeah, which is slightly more conventional. Whereas here, it's much more dissonant, and you really just uh, you enjoy this album by going through what the band wants you to what the band is going through, um, which for me just what I wasn't really capable of.
I can understand where you're coming from, but that exact feeling you're talking about of not feeling like you can participate in the music was why I enjoyed it so much. Other than Ice Cream Truck, which I think had quite a bland, dull instrumental. Everything else, I really thought the instrumentals were well thought out, meticulous, and were designed, I think, to surround you and trap you and make you feel claustrophobic as opposed to you know make you feel like you can move with them. They never enter like a stable rhythm that you can kind of latch onto. They're always almost
Yeah.
assaulting you throughout the whole album, and that's what I really enjoyed. And I think if the album ended at Scissors, maybe it would have been dissatisfying. But to have that sort of assault, that barrage of sound throughout the album, and then conclude it with one of the most
Oh, it
gorgeous
is
Xiu Xiu
beautiful.
songs that's been released, I think, "Normal Love," contextualizes the sonic violence that happened throughout the album in a way that makes it worth it. And there's a real payoff at the end. You feel like you're seeing the light at the end of a tunnel, and it's a real journey, I think, to go through from the beginning to the end. I think lots of this album is about a loss of innocence and kind of becoming privy to the ugliness of the world, of both others and yourself. And to end with Normal Love, this kind of song about longing for acceptance and meaning, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's really, it's not horror for the sake of horror. It's a genuine search for something warm in a world that's really cold, and I really like
Yeah,
that
that's
aspect
what
of the
I
album.
love so much about Xiu Xiu is um their s- they really delve deep into horrible, horrible things, and um in their
Mm,
lyrics and in their sound. And but it's yeah, it comes like you said with this very human element of recognizing that there's more to life than that, and that one doesn't necessarily negate the other. Like you just having having that contrast between like horror and just trauma, and then
mm.
having that contrast between that and genuinity and just being so fragile. Like that's what I get. Is it Jamie, the lead singer? He's
Yeah,
he's
fragile is the
so
word for sure.
he's so human, and he's so like
Mm,
ah, you just you can tell that underneath it all, he just wants, yeah, like you said, genuine acceptance and love. And it's heartbreaking almost then to hear these things throughout the album that and throughout all of Xiu Xiu's music, where you can tell he is just destitute. And yeah, and they're great as a band in terms of if you're going through that sort of thing, just in those moments in your life where you feel like you have nothing, or that everything is essentially shit. Xiu Xiu are perfect, reminding you that you're not alone, not just in their lyrics, but in their sound as well. And that's why I love them so much. And it's why it's quite a shame for me that I don't enjoy this album very much. Because I just, they're really important to me. And I would love to be able to, and the themes in their music are really important to me. And I'd love to be able to go through that with them again, but I just can't.
well, I think I think that's what makes Jamie such an amazing frontman. I mean, you get bands like Sun O, like really scary, drony noise rock bands where the frontman is part of the horror.
Yeah,
It's a really scary vocalist, and it's effective. But what makes Jamie so unique is he can do both. He can both be the scary, horrifying character. There's a great line. Let me just find it real quick. Oh, he has this line where he's yelling and he's saying, I wasn't gonna hurt you. I've heard that one before. I wasn't gonna hurt you. I've said that one before. It sounds like something out of like an 80s slasher movie or something.
yeah,
It's awesome. But he can go from that mode to kind of very vulnerable victim, just wants to be loved, soft vocals that he pulls off on the last track. Um, and in Amaji Vemu. So yeah, I think that kind of his versatility as a frontman, of both making you feel such great discomfort as well as just feeling human, is what makes this band and this album so impressive. Yeah. So, what were your favorite tracks?
um, yeah. Actually, I've sort of all the ones I've really touched on so far. Probably my favorite is Pumpkin Attack on Mommy and Daddy, um, and
Mm,
I just love that. And it is sort of it's not the best reason for liking it, but it is what evokes me the joys of forget as much. It's the song that evokes me the joys of forget the most on the album. Just that like pulsating
yeah.
loop drum rhythm with all these different
Mm,
uh essentially versions of the hook going on through it, and the sound keeps changing
mm.
up, and yeah, it's fantastic, and you just feel so ripped apart and confused and scared by it, and it is, yeah, it's fantastic. um and then yeah, second favorite track is Normal Love. It is beautiful, and
Mm.
really, yeah, again, just reminds you that there's a human core to the band, and they're not just essentially scaring the shit out of you for no reason. It's, yeah, one of my favorite Xiu Xiu songs, to be honest. Because while I enjoy Pumpkin Attack on Mummy and Daddy more, probably like Normal Love stands out, I would say. Um, so actually, yeah, what am I saying? Normal Love is probably my favorite track on the album. Um, and then yeah, lastly, Go with Basket of Fruit. I just really like that. I just love the hook and the Death Grips element that you talked about. The way the way Jamie's vocals sound so sort of subdued and creepy, and oh, it's fantastic.
I'm in total agreement with you. I chose the same
Really?
three favorite
Oh
tracks.
wow!
Yeah, yeah. First, I want to talk about Pumpkin Attack. Um, I agree with everything you said. I really like how it's really
Oh,
dancey. It sounds like something
it's
Flatlander
so
would produce.
it's
Uh, it's it's really cool. One thing I like specifically is the sense of humor in the use of sampling. The voices that are sampled sound kind of adolescent. And I love like if you want to be a human being, then you have to eat garlic. And there's a part when someone shouts, "You're not
oh
my
yeah,
mom," and there's a part when someone shouts, "What if the bear was just a dumbass?" And it's like I don't know what this has to do with anything, but it is incredibly entertaining and
yeah,
endearing,
it's
right?
so
Like
good.
it was awesome. Girl with a Basket of Fruit was another favorite for me, for the reasons you listed. Um, and yeah, I love Og Magog Bog. That part was awesome. One of the best musical moments of the year. And then yeah, Normal Love, final favorite. The last line, just let me pretend I have something to lose.
Yikes!
Oh, gut wrenching, right? Like, oh. And yeah, it's like a breath, just a breath, not even a fresh air, but just actual breathing after being suffocated
Like
for
drowning in
so
the
long.
Thames and
Um,
coming back up to air in Victorian London.
it is exactly like that. And yeah, so overall, would you recommend the
I
album?
totally would. While I didn't enjoy it very much, and myself, I think if you like Xiu Xiu before, there's a decent chance you'll like this. And I don't think there's any sense. I don't know if this is happening, but like you said, it was a divisive album. If there's people being turned off Xiu Xiu by this album, I don't really understand that. Just give it a try. If you don't have to like every album that a band puts out, you know. So yeah, would recommend.
I agree. I would also recommend this album. I'd give it quite a strong recommend. It's definitely not for the faint of heart, and if you're looking for a good
Look
time,
elsewhere.
yeah. But you know, I mean, if you want kind of the Sonic equivalent to an 80s slasher movie, not even slasher, like psychological horror, you know, like then this is definitely the album for you. It's great for that, just inducing intense emotion and fear and claustrophobia, as well as catharsis and relief. So yeah, awesome album. Would definitely
Nice.
recommend it. Uh, Next up, we got Ariana Grande's "Thank You Next." Um, Now, before we talk about this album, I want to talk about "Sweetener," the album she put out last
I
year.
haven't
Have you
heard
heard
it.
it? All right, you are a charlatan, my friend, because this is, in my opinion, one of the best albums, one of the pop albums to come out in the past 5 years.
I did not know that.
Sweetener was such it was such a shock to me. It was honestly a shock to the system. Like I heard it was getting buzz. Eventually, I tried it out, and I liked it enough. I didn't really understand why everyone was so excited. But in the past 6 months, it's just continued to grow and grow and grow on me. And Sweetener is a phenomenal album. Tracks like REM, Get Well Soon, uh, awesome, just awesome. And I absolutely adore and love that album. I love every song on it. And yeah, highly recommend.
Said it's very
Pardon?
long. Yeah.
15 tracks, yeah. But I don't even think there's any filler on it. It's awesome. Very good production, very, very, very good. And I bring it up because I think you have to have Sweetener in mind to talk about Thank You Next.
No.
And I mean, not literally, like you're able to have an opinion on Thank You Next, but I definitely think Thank You Next is intended as a sort of follower to Sweetener. It was released what, like 6 or so months after Sweetener came out, and it's almost like the dark side of Sweetener. So she wrote Sweetener while she was still, I think, engaged with
Yeah.
Pete Davidson. And a lot of the album is very lovey-dovey and really sweet and uplifting. And this is the opposite. This is post the death of Mac Miller, her ex-boyfriend, post ending the engagement, and yeah, it's a dark reflection on Sweetener, I'd argue. So what do we think about the album itself? I mean, that's just context for it. How did you find this? What's the history of Ariana? Are you a closeted Ariana fan, or was this
So
new?
this is my first Ariana project. I
Yeah.
basically had no feelings towards her music. I had no real reason for not listening to this album sooner or anything like that. Um, uh, I guess I might as well just give my thoughts on it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Like I have issues with it. I do. But I think there's actually some stuff to like about it, and um, yeah, I I don't know if I have a huge amount to say about it actually, but um, yeah, I'm just curious to hear what you think about it. To be honest,
Mm. Well, I'm happy you enjoyed it. I thought you'd hate it. I was actually looking forward to you
no,
hating it,
no,
but
yeah,
no, I'm
no,
just
it would have
kidding.
been fun.
I want you to be happy. I'm not trying to hurt you.
Thanks very
um,
much, though.
I've really mixed feelings about this album. It's honestly a huge step down
I
from
can tell.
Sweetener,
Yeah,
and it feels quite rushed. Uh, I wish you put more time into it. There's a thing in this album that happens every time I listen to it, and it happened when it first came out. Is it came out, and I was like really, really excited. It starts off with Imagine, and I was just floored. I was like, "Oh my god, she did it! She released two amazing pop albums within like 7 months. Like this is amazing." And then Needy comes in. I'm still in that
wait,
like mode of like
can
this
I
is
guess where it went
incredible.
wrong for you?
Uh, NASA comes in, and I'm like, this is
Yeah.
still my jam. Love this. And then it's that opening like horn sound at the beginning of Bloodline that really messed me up, and it really, really like it just completely pulled me out. I was
I
like,
had the
oh
exact same
no,
thing.
no, this isn't the way. Uh and yeah, and then the middle of this album is this weird sort of haze where it violently goes to being top 40 mediocrity to like really sparkling moments. And then I really enjoy Seven Rings and Thank You Next. Um, and it's like, oh my god, it's back, the album's back, it's coming back. And then it kind of drops the ball again with Break Out with Your Girlfriend, I'd argue.
Okay.
And yeah, that's my experience of it. I think like if you just oh god, like half of the album is on Sweetener's level and the other half is a huge
Mm,
disappointment.
I yeah, I agree with you completely. I was gonna guess it went wrong with Fake Smile, because Bloodline,
Oh, I like Fake Smile.
Bloodline, I actually,
Let's
no,
fight.
Fake Smile, I do admire because I was like, I was really enjoying the first four tracks. Actually, the start of Bloodline had me worried. It sounded like this Miami kind
Mm.
of like not really very
Yeah.
like interesting sort of thing. Yeah,
Spring
yeah,
break
yeah,
forever.
totally. I was like, uh-oh. And then but I liked the hook. I kind of thought the horn stuff was implemented quite well. And then Fake Smile came in, and I was still like, I was like, oh, okay, she's kind of switching up. She's actually singing about kind of, you know, more interesting. Like she's very vulnerable on that song, and I really liked the way she was putting a lot of the
Mm.
things. Um, and yeah, bad idea, makeup, ghosting, and in my head, I was just like, that they're non-entities. They really start bleeding into one another for me. Um, and I was so happy when Seven Rings came back because oh yeah, the first
Yeah.
time I heard Seven Rings before I heard this album, I did not like it. I was not a fan.
Mm.
Um, and then I heard
Mm.
it this time, and I was like, oh, this is really fun, and like,
Mm.
just yeah, it's Imagine has trap influences in like those triplet flows in the verse, but I enjoy the trap
Mm.
influences here much more. I think she has a lot more fun with it, whereas in Imagine it's in the verse it comes across as as kind of a crutch. um but yeah, Seven Rings is loads of fun. um
I think
yeah, go on.
okay, I like to devote some of this discussion to the big singles of this album because they're like mini
Yeah,
albums in themselves. Because I mean, they were such huge songs. I'd
really.
love to get into them. But just before we move on to deal with the middle of the album, I think it's a really weird listen to me because when I put the album on passively, I definitely feel like I'm just waiting to get to Seven Rings again after I get past NASA. But when I'm really paying attention, I do really enjoy Fake Smile. I think it's a really nice
Yeah,
melody, uh, and Makeup as well is quite a sweet, kind of catchy melody. The song doesn't really go anywhere, but it's a really sweet
just
melody.
kind of ends.
Um, but yeah, Ghost in Bloodline, Bad Idea, and In My Head, they all have the same thing of the first 2 minutes are really boring, and then the instrumental is built up enough by the end of the song that it kind of redeems itself and becomes enjoyable, not really memorable, but in that moment it was fine to be listening to. And thematically, like they're all really consistent and really cool. We're dealing with interesting ideas of kind of admitting ways you're a shitty person and this brand of self-love that is equally, I know what's wrong with me and I'm not ashamed of it. And maybe I should change, but right now, like this is just what it is. Like Fake Smile, you know? Um and there's a great attitude that comes behind that. There's a great swagger in Ariana's performance throughout
Yeah,
this album,
which is
uh,
tongue in cheek to
which
an
I
extent as
adore.
well,
Yeah,
and it really like
yeah.
grounds the album in a way. Because hearing Seven Rings, I think that's why I didn't like it. Because out of context,
Mm,
it just sounded very cocky and kind of obnoxious and everything like that. But then songs like Fake Smile and Needy and all that really, really ground
oh, I love
me
Needy
so
so
much.
much. Needy is so good.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
really,
Yeah,
really
yeah, no.
ground her. And so when you hear it, you're like, yes, Queen, have some fucking fun, you know? Just,
And
uh,
I think to get onto the Seven Rings and Thank You Next, the huge singles, I think there's a sense of self awareness in Seven Rings. Like she in the album, she's made it clear that she's not really happy right now. She's kind of angry and frustrated with life. And Seven Rings, it's this. There's this great line about whoever said money can't can't solve your problems must not have had enough money to solve them. And it's kind of like it's a really fun braggadocious line, but given the context of the album and the misery she's portrayed, she's aware that she can't fix this with money. But it's this kind of this moment of letting yourself feel
yeah,
okay and pretending everything's fine. Uh, and it goes off really well. And earlier on, you brought up the trap influences. Oh, the oh, near the end of the song where she just starts rapping, I was I was blown away. I was genuinely like, this is no right
yeah,
being as good as it
yeah.
is. Like, this shouldn't be the most cringy thing, right? Ariana rapping, but oh my god, that bit when she's like, "Give me the loot," and that whole bit that was incredible. Her flow was really good, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had a similar experience with you. I didn't like it when it first came out. I really liked Thank You Next, and then I heard Seven Rings, and I was like, oh, she's dropped the ball. We're back to normal Ariana. We've ended this weird streak of good music. But no, it's really grown on me, and I love it now. And I can't listen to it without getting a bit worked up. It's just an awesome
Really
song.
gets you going.
Yeah.
It's like a morning cup of coffee, honestly.
It's so good. What do you think about Thank You Next,
I
the title
enjoyed
track?
it. I actually, it's not one of my favorites. But
Interesting.
I did really enjoy it. I guess a lot of people had issues with the sort of uh the message of the song. Whereas when you listen to it, you're just it was
Why?
the whole thing of
What?
essentially her
What?
discarding like her exes and being like, and it's like yeah, and just kind of essentially taking people like Mac Miller and what is it, Pete Davidson, and being like,
Hmm.
fuck you, you know, you were all right then, but
That's
I've moved on.
that's
Yeah,
not
no,
what
and if you listen
happened.
to the music, she literally says, I think the line is, "I'm so fucking grateful for my exes." I think that's literally the line.
Hmm.
And so I just didn't get that at all, and it's one of
And she has that line about Malcolm being an
oh
angel.
yeah, oh yeah.
I'm wishing she could say
Oh,
thank you to him more.
that's so sweet. It's one of the yeah, and like Fake Smile, it's really because while she's being very vulnerable throughout the album, it's probably the most open. Like you can take everything she's saying at face value in that song and just
Hmm.
know she's being extremely genuine, which I really appreciate.
Hmm. I do think there is like a tongue in cheek quality to the name of the song and the album. Thank
Definitely.
You Next. I think it is definitely like dismissive and kind of like this is great. Next, but I'd argue she has great charisma on this album and on her last album, and she pulls off being
Yeah.
sassy without ever feeling mean
And
spirited.
also it's
Um,
okay to be like,
yeah,
okay, next. Like that's fine if that's
there's that great line. I know they say I move on too fast, but this one's gonna last because her name is Ari. Like that's a really, it's a really sweet message. It's really playful and it's warm. It's
yeah,
lovely.
and she's like holding herself on the album cover as well. Like it's yeah, it's an
Yeah.
album about self acceptance and self love, and it's yeah. While it's got some flaws, I guess can I get into that actually? I just like talk about kind of my some of my issues with the album. I would probably say my biggest issue with the album is she sounds great throughout everything, and she does switch it up, but especially with the middle track like Blur that we talked about, I really start thinking her
Mm,
vocals start sounding a bit samey. Um, and that's why
mm.
Seven Rings was such a pleasure when it came along because I was like, aha,
Tough. Yeah.
difference. Whereas in all of the hooks, she started sort of doing those same kind of swirling vocal melodies throughout all the tracks, and I was like,
Mm.
this sounded good for those first three or four tracks, but come on, cut the auto tune, do something else, blow me away, kind of thing. That's how I felt.
I do agree that Thank You Next is, I mean, sorry, Seven Rings is the most. It really brings back the impressive vocal performances we got from the
Yeah,
first three tracks. But I still think there were like cool little interesting moments in the middle bits of the album, like the part in Fake Smile when she's like neck crawled with the attitude. Yeah, like that part. I mean, it's endearing. Like it's like it's not
oh,
high art, but
it's
of
really
lyricism at
entertaining.
least. But it was really entertaining, and there's a part in Bad Idea where she samples herself saying "Ari-chan." I don't know why. Apparently, she learned Japanese. Um, but I like that a lot as well. And yeah, I think there's nice small moments of like little flourishes that I really like. But yeah, I do agree. I wish there was more kind of diversity in the vocals. And her last album didn't have a problem with this. Each track felt really distinct and powerful. And this one, that just didn't happen. It felt a bit more rushed. And I do agree that lots of the vocals get a bit samey. Anyway, what was your favorite three tracks?
So I don't know if I have a particular order yet, but I love NASA. NASA's so fun.
Oh,
It's
and that's
so
so
great.
good. Dude, when I first heard NASA, I had
That's yes.
NASA stuck in my head
Yeah.
for days.
Um, what's it called? Um, Seven Rings was fantastic. Wow, I've changed my mind on Seven Rings so much. It's crazy. I really didn't like it. I don't. It's the same song. What's wrong with my brain? So and I would say Needy. Probably last.
Mm,
And I would say, I don't know if it's my least favorite track, but Break Up With Your Girlfriend I'm Bored was such a weird place to end this album. It
mm,
really, like, I mean, it didn't really sour the rest of the album for me, but I was just sort of like, why there? Not so much for the message of
mm,
the song. I just thought it had those same problems as like track 6, 7, 8, 9 did, where it was just didn't stand out very much, and it just sort of ends, and
mm.
then the album's over. Which you talk about like the album being rushed. That's definitely a symptom of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are my favorites.
Would you say that was your
I
least favorite
guess
track?
I guess I would, just because it's the one that stands out the most to me as not liking it. Whereas
Mm.
things like Makeup and Ghostin', I'm just kind of like, they just blur into each other. Whereas Break Up With a Girlfriend I'm Bored left me with quite a sour taste.
Yeah. I pretty much agree with you on favorite tracks. Seven Rings, Needy, and NASA. Those are the three that really hit me, really stood out to me. Really awesome. And I can't include it because I only get three choices, but Imagine and Thank You Next are really great tracks as well. And yeah, I'm just in agreement with you there. With my least favorite track, it's probably Bad Idea. I
It's
think
not
Bad
good.
Idea is like, well, first of all, it's the longest song on the album, and it's probably, well, other than Ghostin', and it's also like the least interesting song. It's really boring.
Guess
I
you
really don't like that
called
song
it a
at all.
bad idea.
And
I hate myself.
uh,
It has that.
am I gonna dignify that with a
Nah, just
laugh?
leave it.
Um,
Just edit this out. Forget me. Um,
no, I'll edit around this so it sounds like you said the joke and then I laughed.
aw.
Yeah, maybe it was a bad idea. You're right. Maybe half of this album was a bad idea. But Break Up With Your Girlfriend as well. Yeah, it's an extremely weak closer. Wasted Potential. I think it's a really interesting concept for a
Oh,
song.
totally.
Again, I like that kind of, I'm gonna do a shitty thing. Full stop. I like that. It's a very weird brand of honesty that and self awareness. that is really exciting to see in a top 40 pop album. Um, but yeah, the instrumental is quite dull and bland, and it doesn't really pull it off. It had the if it had the energy of Seven Rings, maybe I would have been more into it. But yeah, just bit of a sour taste in the album one for sure. Would you recommend this
Yeah, I
overall?
really would. It's not as good as Dirty Computer, but it like
Whoa,
yeah, it's
that's not fair. You can't
I
compare
don't
it
give
to
a
Janelle
shit.
Monáe.
I have to stand my queen. No one's competing with anyone. Everyone's just making their music. What's it called? It's a lot of fun, and if you can look past its flaws, you'll find a lot to like about it. I'm definitely gonna go and listen to Sweetener. Um, I yeah, it's nice to just I I am such a slut for like just good pop albums. So like yeah, I'm so happy right now. I'm so glad we didn't review Black Album. Because I probably never would have listened to this, and I would have had to heard Black Album, so it would have just been lose lose. Uh,
Black Album by Weezer is available on all streaming services. Don't listen to it. Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with you. I give this a weak recommend. It's as a Sweetener fan, this is quite disappointing, but the highlights are really strong. If this was released as like an
yeah,
EP with maybe 5 songs, that would have been awesome. But yeah, weak recommend. It's fine. But when it's good, it's really good. But when it's bad, it's not really bad. It's just
yeah.
kind of dull and tasteless. But overall, it's harmless.
Give it a strong 6 to a light 7.
Yeah, and hopefully we get more kind of like top 40 artists veering into as brave territory as Ariana does with their lyric writing. And yeah. So next up, we have, I hate the title of this album. I can never get it right. Yankee Hotel Foxtrot.
We're really just knocking
By
them all out of
Wilco.
the park today, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean, we are ticking all the boxes.
We are always in the boxes.
So this is one of my favorite albums of all time. I love this album, and I picked it because I wanted to hear what you thought of it, and have recorded evidence of what you thought of it. Yeah, an interesting story I have is I'm not really a football fan, but for like a month I forced myself to like football to open up social opportunities. So instead of just asking people, "Do you want to go to the pub with me?" I can say, "Do you want to catch the match?" And suddenly this kind of establishes me as like a social authority, right? So so yeah, while watching a game, I was with one of my friends, and yeah, he saw I was listening to this album on my phone, and he said he had heard the album and liked it, and I expressed how much I liked it, and he was shocked about how passionate I was about it, which made me concerned about how you would make up the album. So, what did you think of Wilco, and do you have any past history with them?
Man, I don't have really much past history with anything today, do I? I have no past history with Wilco. The only past history I have with them is, like you said in the last episode, the lead singers are in a couple of episodes of Parks and Rec.
Jeff Tweedy,
my boy. Tweedy is such a perfect name, like for him.
For the music that he makes.
This is the sound of Tweed.
It really is. It doesn't get more tweedy than this.
So, I'm gonna give you my thoughts on the album. In 3, 2, 1. I think this is becoming one of my favorite albums ever. I love this so much.
Yes.
And I'm just gonna get it right other way. Pot Kettle Black is definitely one of my favorite songs ever. Now, I fucking loved this. I couldn't stop listening to it. I had to like keep making my like. I mean, I listened to like to go from this to go to Xiu Xiu was so jarring for so many different reasons.
It's like going from your loving father to your viciously abusive mother.
Yeah, literally, it really was. I loved it so much. They like while we said it's the sound of tweed. Like they do cover a lot of different uh sounds and songwriting styles. Like I never felt like one song sounded the same as the other. I just I just loved it. I would say I love it in the same way that I do like Yoshimi battles the pink robots. It's
Yeah.
I just love it very
That's a good comparison.
purely.
Without the freakishness
without
of the
like
album. Without a 3-minute song of Yoshimi screaming.
Sorry, you can lower the volume of that in editing.
The podcast listeners will suffer our impressions of Yoshimi screaming.
So, wow, I'm just so excited talking about this album. I fucking love this. Thank you so much.
Oh man, that's awesome. I think when an album starts with a 7-minute track called "I Am Trying to Break Your Heart," you know you're in for something special.
Yeah.
I think what's awesome about this album is it manages to both be like slightly understated and soft in a way, but always really impressive. Like there's no like okay, an artist like what artist do I want to lampoon? An artist like Snail Mail and other kind of bedroom poppy artists have very like soft, easygoing songs that just fail to be impressive in any way. They don't do anything interesting instrumentally. But this is the opposite. This is moments of being soft and easygoing. But there's always these huge climaxes, right, that you don't really see coming, and it's complicated orchestral moments which are awesome. It's such a cathartic listen, and it should be boring. Like this should be a boring album, but it's so well executed and well written that it is one of the most fun albums to listen to for me, at least. Yeah, Camera's awesome. I love Camera. I gotta say, this is close to being a perfect album for me. I think every track is amazing.
I basically like just I have no overall criticisms with this album. Like there's like with Ariana Grande, like I criticized her vocal performance over the course of the album, but just everything was wonderful, to be honest with you.
Have you seen the film
No,
Boyhood?
I haven't. But this is Boyhood, the album, if it was good.
Boyhood is awesome.
You're just
okay,
a Richard Linklater.
Don't tread on me.
Linklater slut.
You just don't understand good cinema. Okay. No, but I'm kidding. But no, there's a scene in Boyhood where Ethan Hawke is driving his like 8-year-old son in the car, and he's playing a Wilco album, and he's trying to explain Wilco to his son and why it's so good. And his son is just completely disinterested. And I was really scared that was going to be me in this podcast. But no, yeah, this is just awesome. I think one thing I love about it is the kind of persona of the frontman, Jeff Tweedy. It's not really a persona; it's just who he is. There's this kind of disaffectedness to his voice and this lethargy, and moments where he's trying so hard to connect or emote and kind of failing. And there's a desperation and loneliness to that, which is just really powerful. It's not really depressing to hear. It's just somber. It's really nice. I like
just
it.
Kind of go through and talk about why I love every song as much as I do. Is that okay?
Go for it. Let's go for it. Do you want to go track for track?
I Am Trying to Break Your Heart I just love the way that song kind of very slowly finds its footing as it goes through, and like it's quite janky at the start, and you're like, what are they doing here? And then like the piano comes in and has its nice little solo, and it eventually kind of he just admits to it, and then he finally you build to the part where the song sort of is complete and it's found its rhythm, and he admits, I am trying to break your heart, and he says what is it? I and it would be lying if I said it wasn't easy. Which is a pretty fucked up line. It's a great
great line. It's hilarious. It kind of does what I think "Break Up with Your Girlfriend" by Ariana fails to do,
Mm,
of showing a character who is self-aware about the fact that they're doing something
yeah,
shitty right now and they're being like bitter,
yeah,
but it pulls it off with like this kind of grace, I'd say. It
yeah,
just delivers it. You get this image of this drunken, scorned
yeah,
lover.
yeah.
It's great.
And then it
Yeah,
just
go
kind of
on.
descends into like this. Well, not descends really, ascends into like this great cacophony of piano and guitar, and you can't really tell what's guitar and piano anymore. It's just this rich,
Mm.
wonderful sound, and then it like dies out, and then it almost becomes like this weird sort of avant-garde like noise until camera begins, and then you
Yeah. And with the end of that song, there's which makes me wonder if this is a concept album. If it is, I'm yet to figure out the concept. But there's a moment like right at the end where you know that part when it's really noisy and he's like,
oh
"Rah!"
yeah
There's one he's like, "I love you, I'm the man who loves you," but he's singing it like really poorly, like he's really drunk or
mm,
something. And that comes back later on with track 8, "I'm the Man Who Loves You," and there's this feeling like maybe I don't know, maybe this song's detailing like a specific night where he's really drunk and approaching this woman who he's
yeah.
fallen out with, uh, and then the rest of the album's like catching you up on how we got there. You know, like Iron Man 3.
Whoa, what are you doing?
You must be wondering how I got here. That kind of thing that
Oh
movies do.
yeah, and then you go into camera, and camera's just so nice. It just it's
Mm.
oh when I asked you what to expect from this album, you said expect guitars, and I just didn't know you meant it so like literally. Like I just it this is the album of nice sounding acoustic guitars, and camera is the best example of that. Like oh, it sounds so
Mm. Amazingly produced. Like this is how you
yeah,
produce acoustic guitars,
exactly. Just
right?
oh, it sounds so great. And then there's the like the kind of I don't know what to call it like interlude where yeah it kind of becomes a bit more like electronic and it's oh, so
Mm.
nice. Just
Before we started recording, I was talking about the musical trend in the late 90s with bands like Garbage, Marilyn Manson, and then, new metal, giving us like rock with weird electronic bits
yeah
incorporated. And I think this is kind of part of that, but like the indie
yeah
wave of that, of kind of, yeah, this like indie acoustic rock with like weird electronic stuff incorporated, to buffer up the sound of it. And it goes down really well in this album. I really
um
like it.
yeah yeah it works fantastically. I just want to talk about like he has quite a few it's essentially one liners in this album that really
Yeah.
hit home for me. Like they really impact me in a way
Ah.
like no other one liner in music ever has. I mean, basically the song Reservations.
Well, let's play a
Uh-huh.
game. I'm gonna just say one-liners from the album, and you tell me if they're the
Oh
ones that you were
yeah,
thinking
you're gonna
of.
get them all right.
So, distance
Yeah,
has a way of making love
yeah.
understandable.
Yeah, distance has a way of making it understandable. That's wonderful. The main one for me was which is basically just the final track was Reservations.
Mm.
When he just
Mm.
sings, "I've got reservations about so many things, but not about you," and like it just it's
It's
yeah,
chilling.
it's so
Oh man,
you
yeah,
can tell
yeah,
it comes from a place of just having lost someone. And because
yeah,
he says like, how can I show you that it's me I don't like, essentially implying that
yeah.
yeah he's if he seems disaffected and careless it's because he hates himself basically. And while I don't relate to that
And it,
aspect
it
particularly,
mm,
the idea of just finding because I you know me, I have my issues with OCD and anxiety, so I tend to overthink things a lot. And so just that feeling of finding someone who essentially cuts through all that, and you just it just becomes very pure. Like you just love them. That's why Reservations really resonated with me. It was yeah, it was pretty cathartic listening to it.
And I think it really like rounds out the themes of the album. I mean, you start with a track that's the musical equivalent to an angry drunk man stumbling into a
Yeah,
hasty love affair to hurt somebody because they've been hurt. And then it ends with, yeah, him saying, "How can I convince you it's me I don't like?" It's just, oh man, it really shows a really complex, multifaceted kind of
yeah,
songwriter to pull off that kind of arc, emotional arc
he's
throughout the album.
sympathetic in a way, but he's also at points genuinely unlikable, which I think is in more it's
Mm.
interesting.
It's almost like he's a
Yeah,
human
oh my
being.
god.
Another track I want to talk about is a heavy metal drum
I
roll.
love it so much.
I think the band have jokingly said this is like one of their, you know, it's like when Radiohead plays Paranoid Android. This is one of the songs when they play it live,
Yeah,
people freak
yeah.
out. You know, and yeah, it's an awesome song. I love the tongue-in-cheek lyrics about playing Kiss covers, beautiful and
Oh
stone.
my god, you're right. Nah, I'm totally kidding. They didn't write a song about me. um, what's it called? Sorry, that was stupid as fuck. Um, I just want to talk about Reservations some more. It, it's such a downer ending because the song essentially it's so stripped back for the first 3 minutes or so, and it just sort of ends, and all the sound strips out, and you're and I remember when I got to that point on my first listen, I was like, they've got to come back. You know, they've got to rally the song and come back with something strong to finish off the album. But it just doesn't. It just ends it.
Well, there's that awesome like instrumental
Yeah, but
outro.
it's so it, yeah, it's so
It's quite
sad
sad.
and bittersweet. The
Yeah,
song doesn't really come back. Tweedy doesn't come back. He's like it's yeah, it's just heartbreaking, and I think it really like speaks, but it really got to me because it was I expected it to come back in a way, and it's almost like a life lesson in a
yeah.
way. Just yeah, you know, sometimes things have a sad ending, and it doesn't come back from that.
Yeah. Well, before we get to like talk
Mm.
about our favorite tracks, I think yeah, that ending really sounds like if the first track sounds like being bolstered up by drunkenness and kind of losing inhibition and being like, yeah, I'm pissed off, I'm just gonna act on that. The last track sounds like sobering up and realizing there's nothing you can really do to make yourself feel better and just kind of like walking away. Like it is really depressing and yeah. And earlier on, you talked about Pop Kettle Black, and oh man, one of my favorite climaxes in the
Oh,
song, when he says, "I'm not gonna get caught in the pot kettle black. I'm not gonna get
and
caught," and
that
there's that amazing like
God,
crescendo. Oh,
the
it's so good,
part,
right?
it's so good. Oh, I love it so much.
So let's play another
Um,
really fun game. What are you pick three favorite
fuck you, you
tracks?
son of a fucking bitch. I'm not doing it. I refuse. Get out of here. Use your
You
brain.
have to, you have to do
Okay,
it.
all right. Okay, well, I have to pick Pot Kettle Black because that song infects me with happiness for some.
Mm.
I love it. Um, it's beautiful. It's mwah. It's gorgeous. Okay. um, cool. Oh. Um, I'm gonna say I'm gonna say camera. I love camera. I think it
Yeah.
encapsulates like a lot of the whole tone of the album for me. Of just or one side of the album, just the sound of it, the part of it that sounds just really nice and is really soothing and cathartic. So I definitely picked that. And uh, it's a toss up between I Am Trying to Break Your Heart and Reservations for the last spot. Um, I'm gonna go with Reservations because I find a lot of solace in it, and I think it's really, really beautiful and genuine.
There's a great video of him performing it live, and it's like
Oh,
raining,
God.
and he looked so depressed. and no one in the crowd is dancing or singing because it's raining. And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous live performance of the track. I highly recommend you check that out. It almost like like I'd heard this album a couple years ago, and when you've loved the song for so long, it kind of just sounds like a normal song again. It stops being this revelatory thing. That watching that live performance like really sparked my love for Reservations. I was like, oh yeah, I remember what it felt like when I first heard it. It was Uh, for my favorite tracks, I'm gonna go with Pot Kettle Black because it really feels like a climactic moment on the album, a moment of affirmation. For once he's not beating himself up and he's just going for it. He's deciding to change and not be a hypocrite and I don't know, improve. Heavy Metal Drummer, I'm gonna put up there. It's just one of the most catchy, fun,
That came close.
nostalgic without being saccharine indie rock songs I've ever heard. It's awesome.
It's up there with.
And yeah, Reservations. I agree. That's definitely a favorite. Heart wrenching, and it really destroys you. Now, what's the least favorite track?
It's definitely not a track I don't enjoy, but I would say "I'm the Man Who Loves You" is probably my least favorite. I just don't find it particularly like interesting, or I don't know if I might just be missing out on something, but I don't know if it particularly adds anything to the album's overall character kind of thing. But I think it's fun, and when it comes on, I don't skip it or anything. I just think it's quite like goofy and not really what I'm looking for particularly in this album.
I really like "I'm the Man Who Loves You." I think it kind of reinforces that theme of trying really hard to connect to someone, and it kind of feels like the moment when you put on like a smiling face and you act really confident, and you're like, it's a really jovial track, and it's like, if I could, I'd hold your hand and you'd understand. I'm the man who loves you. It's a great moment of wishing you could just make someone understand you by just being as true as you can. And then Reservations is a similar sentiment, but kind of the darker side of that, the kind of giving up after you've kind of
Giving it your all.
Yeah. For me, my least favorite would probably be War on War. I really like it. I just think lyrically it feels a bit out of place in the album. But it's still a really great song.
I like War on War.
But if I had to pick a least favorite,
I would say it's kind of a lesser camera in a way, because it has that same kind of vibe of like being a very just nice sounding acoustic track, but
for you,
it doesn't sound as nice or go anywhere as interesting. So I definitely see what you mean about that. What?
So obviously, strongest of recommends for this album all around. I assume. Any last things you want to say about it?
I love it. I love it so much. It makes me so happy. And just like, I'm really happy it exists, and it really just made me go like, wow, there's so much music out there that I just haven't heard yet, and and so much of it is gonna be great and amazing and fantastic, and I'm so excited. So just like, go listen to it, and just like it's a masterpiece, right? But it's the most chill masterpiece you've ever heard. So just go into it and just be like, I'm just gonna enjoy myself. I'm gonna have a nice time, and you'll love it. It's gorgeous.
I concur. I completely agree. It's great. It's great. It's awesome. Wow. That concludes kind of the music discussion portion of this episode. Mattie, do you want to tell the lovely people what we're doing for the next podcast? What movies are we talking about?
So, our next podcast will be a film episode led by me, obviously, and we'll be discussing two films. One new, one old, as per usual. We'll be discussing the new Jordan Peele film Us, which came out a couple weeks back now, and is one of the highest grossing horror films ever. Which is always fun to see from Jordan which is nice to see when it's directed by Jordan Peele. And the older film we'll be discussing is Force Majeure, which is I want to say Swedish film, But it's great, and everyone should watch them and listen to us talk about it because it'll be fun. Yeah, that's all. That's all from me.
Yeah. I've already seen Us, so definitely have things I want
Yeah,
to say about it. Never heard of Force Majeure, so I don't know how to pronounce it. So I'm looking forward to that. Um,
it's gonna be
yeah.
great.
So I think that's it. I think we've ticked all the boxes and are ready to call it a day. So thanks for listening, and be sure to tune in
Thanks so
next time.
much. Bye.